All right, officially, good evening, everyone. Hello and welcome. My name is Roberta Ritvo, and I'm Deputy Director at the Jewish Social Justice Roundtable. The Roundtable is an organization that connects and convenes a network of 78 affiliates, and our mission is to strengthen and align the Jewish social justice field so that we can make justice a core part of Jewish expression of life and work toward a more equitable world. And what this actually means is that we work to support the organizations in our network to be great places to work and to make connections among them so then they can go out and do the great work of making the change that we all need to see in the world. And so tonight's session has been set up by people from two of our great affiliates, Avodah and Repair the World. So Emily and Rachel, I will turn it over to you to kick us off and give us some background on this program that we're here tonight for.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that kickoff, Roberta. Welcome everybody who is both here live with us and will be watching later. My name's Emily Becker. I use she and her pronouns, and I am the recruitment director at Avodah.
Great. Good to see everyone. I'm really excited to be here with you all this evening. I'm Rachel Libros. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the fellowship director with Repair the World.
Amazing. So, well, me and Rachel, as well as our teams, Rose and Tiara and Randy, have been talking for a long time about how much we really wanted to combine our networks and really do something that was Repair meets Avodah. Both our organizations have so many wonderful similarities. We really share a niche space together. We know that both our organizations really believe that social justice is a deeply rooted Jewish tradition, that Jews have a really important stake in working towards a more equitable world, and that service can be a really powerful tool for igniting social justice leaders.
Yeah, so we realized that while our organizations share so many of the same values and even approaches to the work, the models through which we do that, even while both running Jewish service years, are pretty different. And so we're so excited to be co-hosting this panel because we're all passionate about connecting young adults across the country to the right Jewish service opportunities for them. And we really hope that this evening will provide more insight and give you a sense of what both experiences look like, feel like, and help to illuminate what the right path might be for you.
So we're going to spend most of our time tonight hearing from our really wonderful alumni panelists, but we're going to take just a couple minutes to talk a little bit about the Jewish Service Corps and the Repair the World Fellowship to highlight some of those similarities and differences. So Rose, if you wouldn't mind sharing your screen, we'll just take a few minutes to go through a little bit about each program. Amazing. Thank you so much, Rose. And you can go ahead and get us to the next slide already. Great. So I'll just talk a little bit about Avodah. Avodah has been around for 23 years now. And while we have a couple different offerings, some of which are aimed at folks who've been in social justice work for a few years already, or even at the senior leadership level, our flagship program is the Jewish Service Corps. You can go to the next slide, Rose. So the Jewish Service Corps is an opportunity to spend a year working, living, and learning at that intersection of social justice and Jewish life. So our core members are placed full-time at leading nonprofits working on critical social justice issues, ranging from immigration to housing to gender-based violence to food insecurity and a whole lot more. And while they're gaining really fantastic on-the-ground experience in these direct service roles, and occasionally community organizing or advocacy roles as well, their work is really deepened and nourished and contextualized by our programming. And our programming is really designed to do a couple different things. It helps our core members really build out a systemic analysis on the root causes and effects of poverty and oppression. It helps them gain exposure to a number of different issue areas and skill sets and methods of social change to really help them figure out what their place in this work is. And finally, it really helps them develop a relationship between their social justice work and their Jewishness that can be really, really sustaining. And they get to continue to explore their Jewishness as well as pluralism and creating communities that can sustain us in this work through our communal living component. So our core members live together in the bayit, in the communal home, where they're able to really create intentional homes that can feel supportive and authentic and nourishing, and that really become the sites where lifelong friendships are made. And these communal homes are really wonderful entry points into our super, super active alumni network, which continues to connect and sustain our core members long after the service year has ended. And you can go to the next slide, Rose, so that Rachel can talk a bit about repair.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Rose. So great. Thank you so much. So Repair the World, as you can see, has a similar mission to Avodah in many ways. Repair's mission is to mobilize Jews in their communities to take action to pursue a just world, with the hope to ignite a lifelong commitment to service with the folks that we engage. And we truly believe that service and support of social change is vital to a flourishing Jewish community, and hope to bring that meaningful, deep service learning to as many folks as we can. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So also similar to Avodah, our fellowship program is the flagship program. While we have some other pathways of engaging in our work now, the fellowship is the deepest opportunity that we offer. So our fellowship is a 2-year full-time stipended opportunity for young adults who are interested in engaging with local nonprofit organizations to meet immediate needs in their communities. So as a Repair Fellow, you spend about half your time in direct service with 2 to 3 different organizations in your first year, and about the second half of your time engaging other folks in the community to bring them on to serve alongside you, to build up the capacity to support these organizations. So that might look like attending other community events, that might look like hosting community events, that could look like taking individuals out to coffee, getting to know them, seeing what they would like to plug into. We also have dedicated time each week where our fellows engage in a curriculum that dives into specific social justice issues that may be coming up while they are serving. So food justice, education justice, racial justice. There's a whole range of issue areas, as well as building up professional development skills. And all of these pieces are happening through the lens of Jewish wisdom and values. We are currently in 6 cities across the country. Next year to be 8. We're really excited to be launching 2 new cities. So you can see down at the bottom the list of cities where our fellows serve.
Great. And we also want to just throw up just a few of the really easy distinctions between our 2 programs. So you can see a few of the highlights. Avodah is 1 year, Repair the World is now 2 years. We are in different parts of the country, with the exception that we both have cohorts in New York. The Service Corps is really focused on direct service. Those are full-time roles. While Repair, you're splitting your time. You're getting to do both direct service as well as recruitment and program facilitation. In Avodah, you live in the communal home in the bayit. That housing is a really, really crucial part of your community, of your experience. While for Repair the World, you choose where you live. You get to be where you want to be in your community. And I actually realized, I didn't even realize this, Rachel, that our economic supports are actually quite similar. I'm not sure there are too many key distinctions there besides the housing piece. Did I forget anything?
No, I don't think so. Thank you so much, Emily. I'll hand it back over to Roberta to introduce the other folks on the call with us.
Great. So let's start with the other staff members from Repair and Avodah who are here, because nothing gets done without a team. And so you've already heard about Rose. Rose, if you could say who you are, what you do, where you do it.
My name is Rose Osborne. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Marketing and Recruitment Associate for Repair the World, and I was a fellow in Pittsburgh in 2018, 2019.
Thank you. Tiara.
Hi, everybody. My name's Tiara. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the recruitment assistant at Avodah, currently zooming in from Oaxaca City, Mexico. And it's good to be with you all here tonight.
Thank you. And Rendy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rendy. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the senior manager of marketing and communications at Repair.
Thank you, team, for supporting us to do this. And this is really what you're here for. And you're here to hear from our 4 panelists who have lived this thing that you all are thinking about joining and doing with your own lives. So we're going to start by asking them to introduce themselves one by one. And then I've got some questions from them so that we can learn more about what their experience was, what they did, where they did it, how it was. So we're going to start off with Emily, and I'm going to ask each panelist to share your name and your pronouns. Tell us where and when you served with which program, what you loved about the city, a favorite thing about that place that you served, and then where you are now and what you're doing now.
I can start us off. Hi, everybody. I'm Emily, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I was a fellow with Repair the World, and I served my first year in Miami and my second year in Brooklyn on the New York City team. My favorite thing about the city I served, I'll start with the first one, Miami. I would have to say the beautiful sunsets and really great food. And what am I doing now? Where do I live now? I'm actually working as the marketing and social media associate with Repair the World. So I'm back and I'm currently living in Miami.
Great. Thank you, Emily. Chelsea.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chelsea John. I use she, her pronouns. I served with Avodah in New York City in 2014 with an organization called Gay Men's Health Crisis, or GMHC. I am now an attorney for New York City. I work for the New York City Commission on Human Rights. I do anti-discrimination law, and I live in New York still. And a favorite thing for me about New York is just the energy and the authenticity of people. I love being here.
Thanks, Chelsea. Max, over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Max. I use he, him pronouns. I apologize about my camera angle. My computer's in the shop right now, so it may jiggle around as my phone falls. I was a food justice fellow with Repair the World in Pittsburgh between 2016 and 2017, and then a team lead also in Pittsburgh, 2017 to 2018. Ended up living in Pittsburgh for 5 years. Absolutely love that city. Moved to DC recently. I'm in grad school. I took advantage of Repair the World's educational opportunities that they offer with the partnership through CMU. And I'm studying public policy and management, and I work for the USDA now.
And what's one thing you loved about Pittsburgh?
Oh God, there's like too many. It's a really pretty city. So if you have any ideas like I did about Pittsburgh being kind of a gray, rundown industrial city, you'd be very surprised if you visited.
And thank you for being here on your phone and not your computer. I think that is a characteristic of people who choose to do these programs, is that they are resourceful and will find a way to make do with what's available in the moment. So thank you for demonstrating that in real life. Last but not least, Hallie, please introduce yourself.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I use she, her pronouns. I was a core member with Avodah just last year, so kind of recent. I served in New Orleans and worked at a Black Arts Center called Ashe Cultural Arts Center, and I was doing oral history work for them. I still work and live in New Orleans. I work part-time for Ashe, and I work in the epidemiology department at Tulane, and I just got into a PhD program, so I'm going to start that soon, with a lot of support from the Avodah alumni community in terms of picking a program, so that's been great. And my favorite thing about New Orleans is the music, lots of music.
Lots of music. Thank you all for the introductions. So now let's get a little into your experiences more deeply. And we're going to start first with Chelsea and then Max. And I'd like you each to talk about why you decided to participate in a Jewish service year program. And if you could also talk about whether you were attracted to the Jewish part, the service year part, or some combination of those.
Yeah, so I was very attracted to doing a service year initially, just service. I knew I wanted to do justice work. I knew I wanted to move away from where I was living at that time, which was Colorado. And I wanted to do that in a safe way where I'd have community. I had just started exploring my Judaism in undergrad. And Avodah became really attractive to me, especially after doing an interview with an alumni who was also in law school at the time. And I just learned, what it could mean to be in community. I had really rejected that idea of living communally. But for me, like that was one of the most important parts in the end. So yeah, initially was not into the idea of doing a Jewish Service Corps per se, but now looking back, having Jewish community is like foundational to who I am as an activist in New York. So that's what propelled me, and that's why I guess I can't stop talking about it.
Thanks, Chelsea. Max, what about you?
Yeah, I actually did not grow up Jewish, so I was just very intrigued in doing a service year similar to Chelsea. I applied to a bunch of different ones, but I had actually met some Repair the World fellows during my time at another organization where I was teaching farming at summer camps. So I had some familiarity. I had a good connection with a former Repair fellow, and he convinced me that it was a good fit given my interest in food and food justice.
Great, thank you. So now I think we should talk about what people actually do all day, what a typical day was like. So Emily, can you start and tell us what did you do and what was the work that would keep you busy day to day?
That's a great question. Well, typically we would start out the day with what we call like a morning meeting. And this happens a couple times a week. And it's really just a space to gather as a cohort with your fellow fellows and your city staff to really like plan and just to update each other on what's going on. So maybe you're planning an upcoming Cocktails with a Conscience, which is one of our like signature events at Repair, where you bring people together to talk about a social justice issue and enjoy cocktails and get to know your community. Or maybe you're needing to source volunteers for an upcoming event. So you're, talking with your fellow fellows to figure out who should we reach out to? Do you have someone in mind that might be able to come and volunteer at this local shelter and tutor kids on Friday? Or maybe we're just planning for months ahead, like programs that we have in mind, or a Shabbat dinner that we want to partner with another organization with. So normally starting out with meetings, and then you have your direct service. So I would head over to Camilla's house, which is the local shelter, and I would work at the front desk and help check in clients for their appointments with their supervisors. And then I would maybe go on a lunch and do a one-on-one, which Rachel Libros spoke about earlier. We do one-on-ones with people in the community to really get to know them, to make those connections, and they'll hopefully become future volunteers and people that are really a part of the Repair community. And then maybe you end the day working again with fellows to plan out programs for the rest of the year, or like grab dinner and explore your city. Every day is really different, and it's just exciting to be able to be in a new city with other people who are exploring the community with you.
Great, thank you. Hallie, how about you? What was a typical day and the work that you did?
Sure. So I think that I have a little bit of a unique Avodah experience in that I did it during a pandemic year. And I also had a placement that is a little bit rare for Avodah, in that it's not a specific direct service role, but because the Black Arts Center that I worked at is such an integral part of the community, it felt relevant to have an Avodah fellow there. So my work was a lot about working with these artists to make sure that the community narratives that we wanted to preserve and like core truths were preserved in this memory project. So I did a lot of interviews during the day, did a lot of audio work, but essentially all of my housemates had different work placements. So throughout the day, people would do their own jobs, whether that be in incarceration services or working in resource equity work. I had a lot of housemates work on food justice stuff. And then we'd come home and we'd have dinner together, because again, pandemic, we ate all of our meals together. We were not leaving the bite. And then we often had programming at night after the workday. So we would kind of convene and discuss different justice issues from a Jewish lens. So that was pretty much a typical day. Yeah.
Thank you. And here's hoping that no future fellows have to experience their core years entirely during a pandemic. And
Absolutely.
yes, I'm just going to throw that out in the world and hope we can manifest it. So I'm curious to hear, Hallie, I'm just actually going to let you keep talking, to start about what was meaningful for you about the program and the work, and what was challenging about that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say two things stick out to me right away. One is that I don't think I would have access as like a non-local in New Orleans to merge into the community in the way that I did without Avodah, both in terms of the alumni network that was here, because the alumni network in New Orleans is really tight, but also in the way that I was able to just kind of jump into this New Orleans community of culture bearers. And, so that felt really special. And also, having the opportunity to think about what Jewish traditions I wanted to maintain as an adult, and kind of reimagine my own practice. And then challenging, I think, communal living is hard. I think when I tell people to do Avodah, I caution them to think really critically about if they're ready to live communally, because it's a really big responsibility. So definitely was a big learning curve in terms of, people have conflicting needs and wants, and learning how to set boundaries and communicate clearly, and definitely a better housemate for it now.
Thank you. And Emily, why don't you tell us about things that were meaningful for you and also challenging?
Yeah, absolutely. I have to agree with Hallie that the fellowship experience really helps you immerse in your community in a way that probably wouldn't be the case if you were just showing up there by yourself. But having this team, and I think my cohort was probably what felt most meaningful for me. Really building those amazing friendships that came out of the work. We lived together, we worked together, and they're incredible people who really were able to support me in my work, but also just as who I am as a person and my personal growth. And so I think just being able to take those connections with you outside of this feels really meaningful. But also my city staff, they were incredible, and their leadership, what they taught me, I will just take it with me everywhere I go. I learned a lot from them, and they just, I don't know, excellent leadership style, and just being able to really jump into this work as a fresh out of college grad, and having their leadership to really support me in a new city and being able to connect with people. Also just the volunteers, all of the people that you get to meet, and service partners. It's really about the connections that you make that will last hopefully years beyond the fellowship.
Definitely. And I think in the answers we've heard so far, one of the things that was said, but I'm just going to pull out to highlight, is one of the differences between the two programs is that Avodahniks become employees at the organizations where they're working, and repair fellows are volunteers with their placement. So they're not considered employees there. So it's a little bit of a difference to note. And I will secondly say something I should have said at the beginning, which is we want your questions. We are not just here to talk at you. So you can use the chat, and we are collecting them to bring at the end, because some of them will be better answered by Rachel and Emily, and some will be for the panelists. And we welcome questions that are for either group of people who might be able to answer them. Back to the panelists though. I'm curious to go back to that initial question where we were talking about the Jewish part of signing up for a Jewish service year. And so Max, if you could first talk about how being in the program kind of strengthened your Jewish community connections or your values to it, or maybe it didn't. That question kind of came with a little bit of an assumption that it did. So I'll let you actually answer how it was or wasn't.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that I didn't grow up Jewish. I actually converted after I did my Repair the World Fellowship. And so it really strengthened, I would say, my connection to Judaism, obviously. I would also say that it really, one of the things that I, as a person who converted a little later in life, did not get, things like the Jewish summer camp experience, Jewish day school, all those things. So it taught me the value of immersing myself into a Jewish community, especially in a new city, which I've done a lot here in DC. Some of my closest friends here are people that I've met at Shabbat dinners and at young Jewish events and through the local synagogue that I'm a part of. And so it really strengthened my connection to Judaism, and also taught me a lot about being in community with people who share a common belief system or just a commonality.
How about you, Chelsea?
Yeah, so it was really important to me when I got into Avodah and started, meeting my roommates in our cohort, that I started to learn more about like their types of Judaism. I feel like I hadn't been exposed to diversity of Jewishness growing up. I had done Chabad Hebrew school because it was the free Hebrew school option, and then I did Kabbalah, so that's its own like world. So coming into the cohort of my year, there were people who were Orthodox or people who kept Shabbat. We had a kosher kitchen. I had never like interacted with a kosher kitchen before. So I just learned a lot from my peers. And from that experience, I felt like really confident going out into different Jewish spaces and being able to like understand where people come from and like their Jewishness. I also want to say that in being part of Avodah, I instantly had friends that I could explore like different types of Judaism with. So I would have, a roommate that say, hey, I'm going to try out the queer synagogue tonight. Do you want to come? And I'd be like, absolutely. I want to come see CBST, or this one's Reconstructionist. I'm like, what's that? So it was really fun to have like this instant friend that was also really curious to be able to explore Judaism with. And I feel like it made like my connection and my like confidence in my Judaism much stronger.
And thank you both for highlighting that there is no test to get into these programs about how Jewish you are and if you are Jewish enough or Jewish in the right way. And so I want to make that abundantly clear to people who are thinking about doing either of these programs. So I'm curious, each of you have now finished your service, and how did your time in your service inform your next steps, lead to your next steps, help you know what you were going to do next? And Emily, why don't you kick us off with that answer?
That's a great question. I think that just like thinking about tools that I took away from the fellowship, we talked a lot about the power of storytelling, and as fellows, we had to learn how to like share our story or our pitch, right? Like to get people involved in the work. And like people would ask us, why are you doing this? What are you doing? It's sometimes hard to explain a fellowship program. And so learning how to share like what we're doing and what inspires us to do the work, and then also like asking other people that we're meeting with, the volunteers, the people we're meeting on one-on-ones, what inspires them, what is their story? And so I took that with me, and now I'm working as the marketing and social media associate for the world, and I get to share those same stories of our supporters, our volunteers, and our community members across like our national scope. So it's been really meaningful to take those pieces with me into this new work.
Thank you. Chelsea, back to you.
So there's a few different ways. I just like touched on earlier, the communal aspect was like a really big life-changing event for me. And for like my next steps, like personally, I've created these really great friends that we are also in touch. Most of my roommates, we've like been to each other's like weddings, and we meet up every year for a big trip together and do it all communally. So like just in creating a community for life, that was really beautiful. Otherwise, I was really intentional in the way that I chose like my placement in New York to have like in-state tuition at a law school, and like networking within my job. So actually after my program, I went to law school. And then when I graduated, I was able to get a job as a lawyer at the organization that I was an organizer with. And that was really awesome because I knew, all the clients, I knew the strategy. It just felt like coming home in that sense. So it can really set you up, I guess, with friends or maybe even a future career.
Yeah. Future career, Hallie, I feel like that's part of your theme if you want to talk about that.
Sure, yeah. I think a couple of different things are popping up for me. One is that I knew I wanted to stay in New Orleans immediately, so I got a job doing my background's in medical anthropology. I was doing kind of the oral history side at my Avodah placement. I realized I missed the health stuff. Now I'm working in health. I realized I actually want to be a medical anthropologist. I'm going to go to medical anthropology school. I think the other thing that came up a lot during my Avodah year was really thinking about like where your strengths lie and having a lot of programming about how do you cultivate a community of care and like what are the ways that you can bring your best self to your work and to the world that you want to see. And it just became very clear to me that the way that I was going to do that was to whatever, do this research that is I'm going to be able to do. But I don't know, I live with my housemates still, some of them. I have a big support community here from Avodah, and it's been a nice, I think it was a great time to not have to worry about the financial stresses of paying rent and stuff, because I had the bayit to live in, to really think about what do I want next, and not have such immediate pressures to worry about.
Thank you. Max?
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest thing I took away from, biggest thing it taught me is that I could make a life and a living out of helping people. So after Repair the World, I did some social service work. I ran a food pantry in Pittsburgh, and I decided to go back to grad school to study public policy to, promote what I consider to be good public policy that can hopefully guarantee that everyone in the country has access to food. And yeah, it also, just like I'm so close with so many of the people that I served with, most people have scattered all across the country now, especially with COVID, but we still talk frequently. And some of my best friends are still the people I served with.
So Max, I'm going to stick with you and ask you about, this is from the chat. I'm going to change it slightly. Chat asks for the most meaningful memory, but I feel like there's a lot of pressure to ask for the most. So how about one meaningful memory of your experience with your fellowship?
Oh, that's a good question. There's a lot. There really is a lot. I think I'm not sure I can pick one out, to be completely honest.
If you talk quickly, you can pick two.
Okay. I think unfortunately it is a bit of a sad note, but when the Tree of Life shooting happened in Pittsburgh, myself, former fellows who were in the city, all gathered together and kind of shared space. I know Repair also opened up their space for the outpouring of emotion that was going on. I was just about to go through, finalize my conversion process at that time, and it was a very difficult time. And I just remember being so grateful, and still being so grateful for that space and the things that Repair taught me and us about how to open up that space, how to hold that space, and really how to care for each other.
Thank you. Thank you. Emily, can I put you on the spot? Do you have a memory that you can share?
Yeah, this is a really early one, but I was talking about our Cocktails with a Conscience type of events earlier in the conversation, and it was like our first event of the year. I just started the fellowship, and I was really nervous, meeting all these new people in the community, putting on this event for the first time with my fellows. Like, this was it. It was our kickoff event. And it was amazing. It was at this ice cream place. This is pre-COVID times. And it was really just fun. And it was such a good time to meet everybody, and we all had like little bulletin boards of who we were, and people would pick out like a little piece of paper to learn more about us if they were interested in the partners we were working with and wanted to connect with us. And it was just a really great kickoff event. And it was just that moment where I was like, just really excited for the year ahead.
Thank you. Hallie, how about you?
Sure. One of the things that was coming to mind as Emily and Max were speaking was during the Avodah year, you go on retreats with your housemates. And so so in New Orleans, we went to Alabama in the fall for like a lovely retreat weekend. And then later we went to Mississippi. And I was just reflecting on how lovely it was to, kind of camp with my housemates and like be around the fire. And we did a lot of, I guess there are exercises, but they didn't feel like exercises, like intentional kinds of conversations. I think the other thing to note is like, I think a lot of my housemates are not people that I would have connected with without Avodah. They're not people I would have traditionally gravitated towards, and they certainly wouldn't have gravitated towards me. So getting the opportunity to build deep relationships with people that I probably wouldn't have crossed paths with was something that felt really prescient to me.
Thank you. Chelsea, I'd like you to share a memory, and then I'd like you to also move us into the next question, which is, what was something that was surprising or unexpected about your experience? Let's start with the memory.
Yeah, so a memory that I was thinking about was, I think it was my first week in Avodah. I just met all these strangers, and I was like such a little rebel activist at the time, and like none of my roommates had ever been to a protest. And the People's Climate March was happening in 2014 in New York City, and it was huge, and people were coming from all over the country. And I got like all my roommates together and helped them like make posters, and we all went down to the march together, and we marched it, and we actually ended up in an Avodah program. Like we marched to Avodah, which was really fun. But that was like a really beautiful experience, just being with them and all these people. And that was like our first big bonding experience. And then your question was something that was unexpected. I'm sorry. Okay. I think like similarly to Hallie, for me, I would not have likely like met a lot of these people and opened up in such like a like intentional way. I feel like I was very independent. I was very like, I was my own person going into this. I felt like, yeah. So when I went into Avodah, it depends on your house, but we created a system where we would do communal buy-ins. We'd make all of our food together. We would have someone bake cupcakes for everyone's birthday. And it just felt like a really beautiful family that was created. And it was something that I was, to be honest, like not open to, but really happy that happened.
Thank you. Emily or Hallie or Max, who also wants to share something that was unexpected?
I can go. So during my time at Repair the World, and this has changed a little bit, you lived with the folks you were serving with, similar to Avodah. And I had never lived with that many people before. And it was a really incredibly valuable lesson in communication, in, solving issues preventatively, to make sure like those little like annoyances about living with people don't explode into a large argument. It's something that I actually rely on a lot. Not a lot, I should say a lot, with my current housemates. It's something that I like continue to remember so that we can take care of things before they balloon into something larger. So soft skills.
Which actually is a perfect transition to my last question for the panelists, which is, there's been some reference to the fact that not only are you doing your jobs and your placements, but you're also having programming and things that Avodah as an organization and Repair the World as an organization are giving you for professional development. And so I'm wondering if you could each think of something from that side of your experience that really helped you develop a skill that you look back now and you're like, yeah, thank you so much for teaching me that thing. Hallie, you look ready to go.
I'm nodding because I'm like trying to remember the names of everyone of the programs that I found really meaningful. So the plus side about having Avodah during a pandemic is that we had a lot of Zoom, which has its negatives, but also allowed us to connect to community members that are like, leaders and speakers that weren't local. So I will say locally, the programs that were most compelling to me and taught me a lot were the ones about New Orleans politics, and incarceration is a major issue in New Orleans. It's like, I mean, the most incarcerated people per capita in the country are in New Orleans. So that was an issue I hadn't really explored before Avodah. And a lot of my housemates were working really closely with that issue. So that was cool to be able to get just some real knowledge about. But one of my, I feel like the programs that I remember the most are Avodah brought in different trainers to lead like anti-racism workshops and to lead, I remember speaking with Joanna Ware from the Jewish Liberation Fund, and like that was mind-blowing to me. So just trying to figure out like who are the people that like I want to stay connected with and like want to pick their brains like that. That was always really inspiring to me.
And so I think it's fair to say from what you just said, but also other things people said, is part of the experience, no matter where you are, is this opening of your eyes to all the things that are out there in terms of social justice, Jewish social justice, community, getting to know a city and all the different ways that you can get to know it. So thank you all for highlighting that in all the different ways that you have. Emily, what about you with some of the programming?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that like we had so many great educators, so it's hard to sort of pick one, but in my second year, I worked closely with Met Council on Housing, their attendance rights group, and my supervisor was actually one of our first like speakers to come onto a call with the Brooklyn cohort to talk about how we can get involved. And I was able to work with her closely throughout the year and just learn directly from her. And this was in the pandemic, so we were learning like how to shift from joining at a rally in person to doing calls online and calling tenants and letting them know about housing updates and just completely shifting the way that we did the work. So I think it was really meaningful to learn from her as someone who's been involved in the work for a really long time, who was also shifting in the middle of the pandemic to really accommodate and like keep everyone together and make everyone still feel connected and to the work that felt meaningful to them.
Thank you. Chelsea, finish us off.
Yeah, so for programming, I was really into our like practical skills programming. I'm sure it's changed a lot since 2014, 2015, but two in particular that stick out. One was on like working as a white person in spaces that are predominantly not white, and like being an anti-racist, which was in 2014 like new information for me and really helpful moving forward in my career. And then also we did like a financial planning class, and I was like, oh, I don't know any of this. This is so helpful. So that was, those little like skills-based classes were really helpful for me.
Thank you.
Oh, I will add that I negotiated my salary $10,000 up because of an Avodah program. So that was very helpful.
That is fantastic. And a little great note to end on. So I want to ask Emily and Rachel to come back to answer some of the questions that have come up in the chat about some of the differences between doing these programs and say AmeriCorps, and to talk about some specifics of the bite that Avodah offer. There's a Jew of color, one in New York for Jews of color. There was a question about that, and more generally, like how many people are you living with and what's it like? So I'll throw that group of questions over to you.
I can jump in with the question from Lauren. So the communal living, it depends on the city, right? So in my first year, I lived with 2 other fellows. So there was 3 of us in like a 3-bedroom apartment. But I also had friends in other cities that were just in like a 2-bed, 2-bath sort of situation. So it depends. And it's kind of like college, honestly. Like I went from college into the fellowship, so I think I would compare it to that type of communal living. And yeah, you really get to know people. But there's a lot of really great sides about it too, because you can like quickly ask a question about work across the room, or you can like laugh about something really crazy that happened at your partner, like in the middle of the day. And so you really build that like rapport, and a lot of great friendships can come out of it.
I'd love to jump in quickly and build off of what Emily shared, because we have shifted our model a bit since Emily and Max are both fellows. So our current cohort of fellows is our first group to sign on for our 2-year model, which has been a super exciting shift in our program. part of what has come with the shift to the 2-year model in talking to alumni and staff is that we've moved away from a communal living requirement as part of the program because we heard from folks that it would feel more sustainable to be in a space for 2 years if they had more agency in choosing where they were living. So I would say about half of our current fellows have still chosen to live together, and half of them have chosen to live independently. So there's that opportunity for communal living that still does exist. But if it feels really important to you to have some more work-life balance in that way, and that will keep you going through the fellowship, then that's also an option for you. So I just wanted to highlight a little bit of a shift that's happened since Emily completed the program as well.
And I can speak a little bit from the Avodah side. So our cohorts are different sizes in different cities. In New York, we tend to have up to 24 core members in 3 different apartments. New Orleans, it's 12 folks in one house. Chicago, 16 folks in one house. It's big. There are 2 kitchens. DC is up to 24 people in 2 houses next to each other, lovingly called the compound. And in our newest city, San Diego, we have space for 6 to 10 folks in one house. And I can also talk a little bit about our Jews of Color Bayit. I know there's a question about that as well. So just this past year, we converted one of our bayits in New York City into our Jews of Color bayit. And that really came from some of the feedback we received from a lot of the JOC alumni who did Avodah, who spoke about how communal living was really impactful, and transparently, it could be really challenging to always be living in a predominantly white space. So we created the JOC bayit as an opportunity for JOC applicants who were really excited to live in a space where JOCs would be the majority, where they could opt in. And our JOC bayit in New York right now it's in the same building as one of our other bayits. So there's both opportunities for shared programming, shared community building, as well as some programming that is specific and targeted to really nurture the leadership of our JOCs. Programs that focus on JOC identity formation and community building. And we also have paired our JOC bayit members with mentors who are leaders in the social justice space, or specifically in the Jews of Color ecosystem in New York, which is really, really large and really, really vibrant and thriving.
You know, we've been using this Hebrew word bayit and not defining it, which is bad on us.
You're so right, Roberta. A bayit is a communal home. Thank you.
And so Emily or Rachel, can either of you address what makes these programs different from, say, other AmeriCorps programs, if you know the answer to that question?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And a fun fact, Avodah actually used to be an AmeriCorps program years ago before some of the rules changed. Oh yeah, when Chelsea was, and some of the rules changed, we couldn't be AmeriCorps anymore. I mean, it's the most easy, obvious answer, but I really think having such a strong Jewish community piece really sets Avodah and Repair probably apart from other AmeriCorps programs. And Avodah, one of the reasons why we're so passionate about the marriage of Jewish life and social justice is that we know social justice work is really hard. A lot of folks burn out, it can be really challenging, and we really see Jewishness as a really immense source of sustainment, and a really wonderful way to really tie your work into ritual and traditions and community and values that can really keep you in this work. So to me, that's something really, really special that sets programs like Avodah and Repair apart. Of course, would love to hear what you think too, Rachel.
Yeah, thanks. So in my understanding of AmeriCorps programs, there are a ton of different models of what those can look like as well. I think something specific to Repair's model that I think feels a little bit different is that our fellows aren't doing direct service for their full for all of their hours. It's that split between direct service time with our partner organizations and really intentional time out in the community, making connections, building their networks, and engaging in some set set blocks of really of learning as well. So I think that combination of activities is unique compared to a lot of AmeriCorps programs. I would also say that while fellows work 40 hours a week on average, it's not exactly a 9 to 5. We have evening programming sometimes. Sometimes we're hosting an event on a weekend, and we work with our fellows to shift their hours to make sure it all balances out. But it's not like a 9 to 5 kind of job.
Thank you. Hallie, you had something you wanted to add.
Yeah, I think the question about the AmeriCorps program is one that I think about a lot with some of my friends that have done those programs. And I think one of the things that I would want to stress, I don't know about, I mean, I'm sure for Repair as well, but at least for Avodah, is that it's not a gap year. It's really not this buffer year. It's not just a time, it's not easy. And it's not, I mean, I don't think AmeriCorps is easy on the whole, but I think it's like, you can certainly go into Avodah and not know what you want to do next and like use the time to figure it out. But the point isn't that it's like this gap year after college or whatever. It's like its own really meaningful, intentional thing. And to me, that feels pretty distinct from some other programs.
And you remind me of one thing my grandmother used to teach me, because you just said what you want to do next. And I grew up very much of the like, what do I want to do with my life? And she's like, no, you just have to figure out what you want to do next. And so I think that both of these programs provide people with an opportunity to have a next, and also use it as an opportunity to see lots of other things that could be then the following next. And thank you for tipping us into that direction. I noticed that we are coming up on the end of our time. And so Emily and Rachel have some information about applications, due dates, things like that, that I would like to let you leave everyone with as we come to a close.
Absolutely. So for the Jewish Service Corps, we are coming up quickly on our next deadline of February 28th. And after that, we're going to have one more deadline on March 29th before we switch to fully rolling admissions until our cohorts are filled. But we really do encourage folks to try to hit those earlier deadlines. Our priority deadline already passed. The sooner you apply, the better chance you really have of matching with a placement organization you're really excited about. And I'm going to share in the chat me and Sierra's contact information and our website. And we welcome any questions. And Rachel.
Thanks. Yeah, so for the fellowship, we've also passed our priority deadline, but applications are very much still open. Our final deadline is not until March 31st. But as Emily said, similar for us, the sooner you get an application in, the more likely it is that there will be spots still available in a city of interest or with a placement of your choice. So highly encourage applications to come in sooner rather than later. And we will also be putting Repair contact info in the chat as well, links to the application. And for both organizations, that information will be sent out in the follow-up email as well. So if you don't catch them in the chat, don't stress.
Great. And so I want to end by doing the thanks, but first I'm going to share websites because people watching this later may not have a chat in front of them. So Avodah is actually avodah.net, and Repair is repair.org.
WeRepair.org.
WeRepair.org. I knew there was something that I was missing. WeRepair.org. So you who are watching this later can go to those websites to get information that you need. And yes, Avodah couldn't get the .org, so then they became a .net. I want to thank Emily and Rachel for putting this together. I want to thank Rose, Rendy, and Tiara for being our behind the scenes support. And I especially want to thank our alumni fellows for taking the time out of your evenings to share your experience. Emily, Chelsea, Hallie, and Max, it's been a real pleasure getting to know you. Thank you all who came tonight. Thank you all who watch in the future. And I wish each of you the best in luck in finding that next thing that is right for you. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
And thank you,
much,
Roberta. Thank you, Roberta.
So much,
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great night, everyone. Thanks for
Night,
joining.
everyone.